Jakarta memanggil. Kini saatnya kita bersatu untuk berkolaborasi. Jadilah bagian dari perayaan kolaborasi Kota Jakarta dalam Jakarta Development Collaboration Network Forum 2020. Wujudkan paradigma Kota 4.0 dengan mengikuti forum diskusi menarik bersama para pakar dan pegiat kolaborasi dalam Community Talks, Policy Discussion, dan International Plenary Discussion. Jakarta mengajak seluruh lapisan masyarakat untuk berkolaborasi melalui kompetisi Citizen Collaboration Diary dan membuka peluang lebih luas melalui fitur kolaborasi lainnya pada JDCN Forum 2020. Jadilah saksi penganugerahan bagi pegiat kolaborasi dalam JDCN Lifetime Achievement serta Plus Jakarta Award. Saksikan Jakarta Development Collaboration Network Forum 2020 melalui website jdcn.plusjakarta.com dan kanal YouTube Pemprov DKI Jakarta. Mari bersama membangun Jakarta.
Di tengah berbagai interaksi, tersisip sepenggal cerita tentang keajaiban. Sebuah solusi yang menghadirkan kemudahan. Untuk menikmati momen yang berkesan, menikmati waktu melepas beban, penuh canda tawa, merasa bahagia dalam kesederhanaan. Karena keajaiban adalah nama lain dari kesederhanaan yang menghadirkan kemudahan dalam keseharian. Jika segalanya membutuhkan uang dalam setiap transaksi, mengapa memilih rumit dengan membawa uang tunai berlebih? Beralih ke cashless berarti selangkah lebih dekat dengan kemudahan. Menghadirkan layanan perbankan digital yang terintegrasi, Bank DKI menawarkan kemudahan transaksi non-tunai dalam genggaman. Memanfaatkan Jack-Card dan Jack-One Mobile yang merepresentasikan keajaiban dari semua kesederhanaan layanan perbankan. Mengapa memilih rumit jika kemudahan bisa Anda genggam? Karena kami tahu, di balik setiap transaksi terdapat solusi yang menghadirkan kemudahan. Layanan cashless Bank DKI menawarkan kenyamanan yang tak tergantikan.
Kita hari ini sama-sama menyaksikan hasil karya mereka, dan saya ingin apresiasi juga kepada Transjakarta yang sudah memberikan kesempatan kepada anak-anak penyandang autisme untuk berkarya di Indonesia. 3, 2, 1.
change is all around us.
Businesses are using new technology to become more connected and efficient.
They're using data and analytics to measure every aspect of their performance.
They're taking a holistic approach that puts their clients first. And so must we.
That's why we believe the time is right to bring all our expertise together under the Korn Ferry brand.
We're creating a global firm that sits at the intersection of strategy and talent.
We're the world's first dedicated organizational consultants.
On a mission to enable every individual, team, and company to exceed their potential.
And be more than they ever thought possible.
It's a new era for business.
It's a new era for Korn Ferry. And it starts now.
Pasar Jaya adalah perusahaan daerah milik pemerintah Provinsi DKI Jakarta yang melaksanakan pelayanan umum dalam bidang pengelolaan area pasar, membina pedagang pasar, ikut membantu stabilitas harga, dan kelancaran distribusi barang dan jasa.
Jakarta Industrial Estate Pulau Gadung builds and drives the nation's economy.
Krida Jakarta adalah BUMD milik DKI Jakarta yang bergerak dalam bidang penjaminan kredit atau pembiayaan bagi koperasi dan UMKM. Sebagai lembaga penjamin kredit atau pembiayaan, Krida Jakarta diatur dan diawasi oleh Otoritas Jasa Keuangan atau OJK. Krida Jakarta membantu membuka akses permodalan dari lembaga keuangan bank dan non-bank untuk koperasi dan UMKM yang visible tapi tidak bankable dalam rangka mengembangkan bisnisnya. Untuk mendapatkan pembiayaan dari perbankan, nasabah mengajukan permohonan kredit atau pembiayaan. Selanjutnya, pihak bank merealisasikan pengajuan kredit tersebut. Kemudian pihak bank melakukan pengajuan penjaminan kredit kepada Krida Jakarta. Dan Krida Jakarta akan menerbitkan sertifikat penjaminan atas nama nasabah. Krida Jakarta menyediakan produk-produk unggulan berupa penjaminan kredit mikro kecil, penjaminan kredit konstruksi, penjaminan kredit modal usaha, penjaminan kredit multiguna, surety bond, custom bond, dan penjaminan bank garansi yang bisa dimanfaatkan oleh para nasabah. Guna memaksimalkan pelayanannya, Krida Jakarta bermitra kerja dengan Bank DKI, bank umum lainnya, bank perkreditan rakyat, multifinance, LPDB, serta koperasi yang berada di Jakarta. Sama Krida Jakarta, koperasi UMKM bisa. Untuk informasi lebih lanjut mengenai Krida Jakarta, kunjungi kami di
Selamat datang di Jakarta, kota yang mempunyai luas wilayah 661,5 km persegi dengan jumlah penduduk sebanyak 11.063.324 jiwa menjadi salah satu kota besar yang tidak pernah tidur. Tetapi semua berubah saat pandemi COVID-19 melanda dunia. Jakarta pun seolah mengambil waktu istirahat panjang. Jakarta yang dulu riuh dengan segala aktivitasnya mendadak hening, menutup harapan banyak orang untuk tetap bersama dan memaksa untuk lebih berjuang. UMKM pun tak terlepas dari pukulan berat akibat COVID-19. Tidak sedikit yang terpaksa harus menyerah karena keadaan. Namun, tidak sedikit juga yang tetap berharap dan bertahan.
Ada mengalami penurunan gratis hampir 80%.
Tidak hanya berdiam diri dengan semangat kebersamaan, Jakarta harus bangkit dan UKM bisa menjadi salah satu kunci pulihnya ekonomi. Dengan berbagai upaya yang dilakukan, UKM dapat kembali berdaya dan tumbuh. Dengan semangat kreatif, inovatif, aktif, dan transformatif, mari kita bangun kembali UMKM melalui digitalisasi sebagai penggerak visi dan misi untuk mendobrak keterbatasan saat ini.
Waktu seakan berhenti. Kotaku yang tak pernah lelah, ramai yang selalu menyelimuti, kini menjadi sepi. Rasanya tak mungkin, tapi ini terjadi. Di awal tahun itu, tak ada padat, tak ada yang bergerak dengan cepat. Semua melambat. Keheningan di setiap persimpangan, keramaian itu hilang, kotaku sejenak lengang. Semua kembali pulang, menepi, merapatkan pintu-pintu demi menjaga dan berlindung diri. Di tengah situasi pandemi yang tak pasti, ada mereka yang memilih untuk tetap bergerak, menebar aksi hidup baik untuk sekitarnya. Ada mereka yang selalu terjaga, berkorban tanpa suara, mengingatkan kita menjaga diri, menjaga kesehatan untuk orang-orang yang kita sayangi. Resah, lelah, dan takut tak ditunjukkan. Mereka yang memilih ambil bagian, turun langsung menjadi penjaga senyum yang lain. Ibu kota, sosokmu yang menyatukan dan saling menguatkan, menghadirkan suasana Jakarta yang humanis dan penuh harapan, menghadirkan cerita dengan karya yang berdampak, membentuk simpul kekuatan Jakarta, menguatkan kita untuk bergerak bersama.
Halo, selamat datang di Plus Jakarta. Kami hadir untuk mengajak Anda berkolaborasi bangun kota. Memangnya ada apa di Jakarta? Jakarta, sebuah kota dengan 11 juta jiwa yang terisi dalam 661,5 km luasnya, lebih dari 4 abad usianya, punya segudang cerita. Mulai dari kisah asmara, raih cita-cita, membangun keluarga, buat usaha, hingga berkontribusi untuk sesama. Semua itu diisi dalam ragam rasa dan juga asa yang berbeda, tapi ada satu hal yang sama, ada kolaborasi di dalamnya. Menurut KBBI, kolaborasi berarti suatu perbuatan kerjasama. Mari kita telisik. Mewujudkan satu hari yang baik untukmu pergi bekerja misalnya, sudah perlu berbagai tangan di dalamnya. Keluarga yang saling menyemangati, polisi lalu lintas yang menjaga agar tetap lancar dan kamu tidak terlambat, petugas Transjakarta yang menjaga suasana hati supaya terus semangat, hingga petugas tanaman yang merawat setiap tanaman di jalan agar tanaman yang biasa kamu lihat terus rupawan. Jadi, Jakarta bukan hanya lagi tentang aku, kamu, dan dia, tapi kita. Kita dan kota yang sudah berusia lebih dari 4 abad. Kita dan seluruh isi kota saling bertahan. Satu harimu saja dimulai dari satu kolaborasi. Bagaimana kalau 469 tahun? Silakan kau bayangkan. Jadi, saat kota memanggil, ayo kita jawab. Caranya mudah saja. Kamu bisa gunakan seperangkat kecil gawaimu untuk sebarkan semangat kolaborasi kota lewat media. Kamu punya Instagram. Kamu bisa lihat berbagai cerita kolaborasi singkat dan informasi apa yang sedang ada di Jakarta. Mau lebih lagi? Kunjungi saja situs kami di plusjakarta.com. Di sini, kamu bukan sekedar bisa membaca, tapi juga menulis cerita. Ceritakan seluruh idemu, apa yang menjadi gagasanmu untuk bangun kota ini. Lalu diskusikan, siapa tahu bisa terwujudkan. Lebih lagi, kamu punya YouTube yang bisa kamu jadikan sarana untuk berikan gambaran seluruh orang tentang kolaborasi yang sudah terbangun. Yang paling penting, semua akan berakhir dengan dampak. Akan ada sebuah tindakan nyata yang muncul nantinya. Berawal dari perasaan, kesadaran, jadi tindakan. Sudah siap? Selamat datang, teman kolaborasi.
Kolaborasi menjadi kunci penting dalam segala aspek kehidupan bermasyarakat. Saat ini, kolaborasi dapat kita temui di berbagai lapisan masyarakat, komunitas, sistem pemerintahan, hingga perusahaan, di mana kota sebagai kolaborator dan warga menjadi co-kreator. Terutama pada tahun 2020 saat Jakarta harus menghadapi wabah COVID-19 dan berada pada masa yang tidak mudah. Di masa yang sulit ini, solidaritas masyarakat tidak hilang dan justru kolaborasi semakin terasa. Tidak berhenti di sana, masyarakat terus bergerak. Sebagai bukti nyata, berbagai pihak terus berkomitmen untuk berkolaborasi pada tahun 2021 dan bahkan tahun-tahun berikutnya. Pertama, KSBB, kolaborasi sosial berskala besar. Pembatasan sosial membuat ruang interaksi masyarakat begitu terbatas, namun justru membuat solidaritas semakin kuat. Banyak masyarakat yang ingin berbagi, namun sulit tersalurkan secara tepat dan merata. Jakarta hadir memfasilitasi warga untuk dapat membantu warga yang lainnya. Bersama lembaga kemanusiaan, Pemprov telah memfasilitasi lebih dari 200 kolaborator membantu keluarga rentan dan UMKM. Pada 2021, Pemprov mengajak warga untuk terus berkolaborasi dalam membantu murid, guru, dan warga lainnya. Tidak hanya itu, Pemprov DKI Jakarta berkolaborasi menata simpul transportasi untuk memudahkan masyarakat bergerak. Merangkul seluruh pihak menata simpul transportasi, pemerintah bergerak bersama pemerintah pusat dan PT KAI, PT MRT, Transjakarta, Angkot, Bajai, hingga ojek online menata 4 stasiun pada tahun 2020. Terus bergerak, pada tahun 2021 kita akan merasakan kemudahan tersebut di stasiun-stasiun lainnya seperti Stasiun Gondangdia, Manggarai, Palmerah, Tebet, dan Kota. Jakarta-Berlin Partnership. Meski memiliki karakteristik yang berbeda, Jakarta dan Berlin berkomitmen untuk mewujudkan kota yang lebih pintar. Kedepan, Jakarta dan Berlin akan berkolaborasi mengembangkan ekosistem digital melalui kesepakatan yang ditandatangani pada 16 Desember 2020 lalu. Akan lebih banyak lagi aksi bersama oleh kedua kota, yaitu dengan berbagai workshop diskusi kebijakan dan program strategis lainnya. 2021, Jakarta akan memiliki berbagai ruang interaksi dan kolaborasi baru untuk kota. Flyover Lenteng Agung, stadion, Taman Ismail Marzuki, warna-warni kampung kota, integrasi halte CSW, dan masih banyak lainnya. Ini yang membuktikan Jakarta kuat karena peran dari kita semua. Karena Jakarta kita adalah kota kolaborasi. Tunggu aksi nyata warga Jakarta di 2021. Mari bergabung dan sampai jumpa di JDCN Forum 2021.
Indonesia kebangsaan. good morning. I'm Amelia Yahya and I'll be guiding you through Jakarta's Development Collaboration Network Forum 2020's second day. Today's policy discussion will involve several esteemed national and international experts from various fields. And afterwards, there will be an international plenary discussion with keynote speaker, the Governor of Jakarta, Mr. Anies Baswedan. Jakarta's Development Collaboration Network Forum 2020 is broadcast from CNN Indonesia in Jakarta and can be accessed directly via jdcn.plusjakarta.com's website. The first topic to be discussed on this policy discussion is environmental resilience, rethinking our climate and sustainability. The pandemic has evidently had a direct and indirect effect on the current Earth climate. But the positive side of this pandemic, if there's any, is that it pushes us to contemplate on our lives and question on what we are too reliant on. Which is why today we are going to talk about whether the way people live will change after the pandemic, how the city can contribute to the sustainability of Mother Nature, and how the government collaborates with their citizens to deal with various top-to-bottom issues as we overcome this pandemic together. But before we start our first policy discussion, allow me to give you a little glimpse on environmental resilience, rethinking our climate and sustainability.
COVID-19, which was first found in Wuhan, China, today still continues to spread. Almost all countries in the world are exposed to this deadly virus. By the end of November 2020, the number of positive cases around the world reached more than 63 million, and nearly 1.5 million people have died because of this disease. The global pandemic caused by COVID-19 has changed people's way of living. The pandemic makes us unable to make any physical contact with other people, avoid crowds, and keep physical distancing. The pandemic has even made Kaabah and Mecca into a quiet place. It also made football matches in stadiums run without spectators. The pandemic changed almost everything. That is why we should apply health protocols to stop the spread of COVID-19, such as keeping physical distance from one another, wearing face masks, and washing our hands. However, there is a silver lining behind the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic, which impacted so many lives, has positive effects on the Earth's climate. The pandemic, which impacted so many lives, Earth has been given a break from human activities that pollute and have negative effect on the climate. The effects of pandemic on climate change are also evident in India. Air pollution in India has decreased significantly because a large number of factories are not allowed to operate. Compared with the same time of the year in New York City in the United States, the level of air pollution lessened drastically by 50%. In Europe, satellite image shows emissions have faded in North Italy and England. In Jakarta, the improvements in air quality began the first time large-scale social restrictions was first enacted last April. The restrictions cleansed pollution, making the air quality in Jakarta improve to the category of good for the first time in 28 years. The drop in gas emissions is also due to the reduced numbers of private vehicles. Currently, the provincial government of DKI Jakarta has issued regulations to control air pollution related to three main sources of pollution, namely transportation sector as well as processing and power industries. Besides reducing air pollution, the policy enables citizens to live healthier life and effectively cuts down traffic jams, mitigates climate change, and improves energy use and efficiency. The implementation of lockdown and social restrictions in a number of countries should be done, and all must comply so that positive effects on the environment could take place. However, although the pandemic has reduced air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, when the pandemic ends, the condition will revert back to as they were before, as people return to activities that damage the world's climate.
So to lead this first discussion, we have Andita Utami, environmental economist and co-founder of Think Policy Society. Ms. Andita will be our moderator for the first session. Good morning, Andita. I hope you're doing well today.
I am doing good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So Andita, I'm moderating on the topic of environmental resilience, rethinking our climate and sustainability. And speaking of resilience, of course, as we're already almost reaching the end of this year, how time has flown by. Now, speaking of resilience, how resilient have you been this year?
Well, I tried to do my best despite the challenges coming from, working from home for over 9-10 months now. Overall, I would say I'm quite resilient.
I guess we're all changing our habits today, yeah? And now, Andita, let us now greet our speakers on our first discussion who have joined us virtually. Let's say hello to them.
Yeah, hi, actually, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to have all of you with us today. As we have heard from the video, we have a very urgent and important topic to discuss this morning, which is rethinking our climate and sustainability. The video already highlighted some important issues, including the fact that air pollution is affecting the people living in Jakarta. Before the pandemic, actually, one study highlighted how air pollution in Jakarta might reduce life expectancy. We also know that Jakarta is one of the 15 most at-risk cities of sinking. I'm sure that the January flood earlier this year is still fresh in your memory as it is in mine. And so with the pandemic, now we have another pressure for economic recovery ahead of us. So all of these complex challenges and the climate crisis, what can we actually do to deal with them and help Jakarta become more resilient? Instead of hearing from me, let's hear more about it from our speakers, and I will introduce them now one by one. The first one is Ibu Vera Ravinasari. Good morning, Ibu. Ibu Vera is the acting deputy. Very happy to have you here this morning. So Ibu Vera is the acting deputy governor for spatial planning and the environment of Jakarta Capital City Government. And Ibu Vera will deliver about Jakarta's strategy in combating the climate crisis, a very important topic. And then we also have Jessica Sutton. Good morning, Jessica. Hope you're doing well. Jessica is on the other sphere of the globe joining us. She is the global lead for air quality of World Resources Institute, and she will talk about the link between urban sustainability and improved quality of life, highlighting the importance of collaboration between public, private, and community in achieving a new urban reality. And this is the spirit, of course, of Jakarta Development Collaboration Network. And finally, we have Mary Jane Alvarez, the Regional Program Manager of ICLEI Southeast Asia, who's calling in from the Philippines. Hi, Mary Jane.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. She will give a review on how the cities in Southeast Asia are affected by the pandemic and how cities could take climate actions as elaborated by ICLEI's pathways. She will also highlight the challenges of changing economic and social trends for the future and how it should affect how cities anticipate today. And so before we start, I would like to highlight to the speakers that our time is quite limited. So we hope that you can contain your presentation in about 8 minutes so that we can have more time for discussion later at the end. And so for the first opportunity, I would like to invite Ibu Vera Ravinasari. The floor is yours, Ibu, please.
Good morning from Jakarta, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of JDCN Forum 2020. I'm so glad to be part of this event. I hope all of you enjoy the event and the discussions during the forum. By the end of this forum, I'm looking forward to seeing more collaborations happening in the city, and I would like to give you an update upon the efforts of Jakarta as the biggest metropolis in the country in combating climate change impacts. Let me take you to Jakarta 10 years from now in 2030. The year 2030 seems magical and is weighted by everyone. That is the year when we set our sustainable development goals, and in the similar year, Jakarta will be 503 years old. And Jakarta is aimed to be a climate resilient city which not only commit to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30%, but also envision to have a resilient urban system, prepare the city inhabitants to mitigate and adapt to changing environments due to climate change impacts. We envision Jakarta will be a city that is not just livable for everyone, but also a city that is able to build back better after any crisis, environmental crisis, economic crisis, or pandemic crisis, like we are facing today. Jakarta will be the center of excellence in climate actions in the national, regional, and global level. In order to make this vision come to reality, hard work and consistency are needed. The results of climate actions couldn't happen overnight. The commitment from the city and its stakeholders is crucial to keep the actions sustainable. Jakarta has maximized its efforts to achieve the target by focusing in several sectors. Among others are transportation and mobility, building and energy efficiency, agriculture, forestry, and other land uses, or AFOLU, also industry. In terms of transportation and mobility, Jakarta has done remarkable actions to encourage city inhabitants to shift from private vehicle usage to public transportation. The ultimate key to be able to succeed is having a great infrastructure that could stimulate people to walk and create a mindset that using public transportations is convenient. In regards to this, Jakarta has done an integration for its various public transportations. Jakarta also constructed pedestrian-friendly sidewalks and facilities, and also provided cyclists with dedicated bike lanes. Lastly, Jakarta is aimed to provide electric buses and continues the development of MRT and LRT throughout the city. Besides the transportation, the efforts of Jakarta to realize its commitment and vision are also done in two other categories: buildings and energy efficiency, also governance. In terms of buildings and energy efficiency, Jakarta implements the green building principles and installed solar panels in 12 government-owned buildings and 80 schools. Moreover, these aforementioned efforts are well supported with its policy, governance instruction regarding air quality action, and Jakarta Cleaner Air 2030 roadmap. At the moment, Jakarta is also in the process to update its two climate action plans, which are Regional Action Plan for Greenhouse Gas Emissions and Climate Change Adaptation. In addition to this, Jakarta has fastened its efforts by composing quick wins climate actions. Above all, the climate change mitigation and adaptation issues have been internalized to different local government units, which is represented by the presence of Special Task Force on Climate Mitigation and Adaptation. This task force has members from each local government unit, experts, and community organizations, one of real examples of collaboration among different stakeholders in the city. The city is greener, and we try to plant trees and pollution-absorbing plants in several locations. The city also constructed 50 parks in 2019. One of them is shown in the picture, Gelora Bung Karno Urban Forest, which is located in the heart of the city. This year, the world is shocked with the appearance of COVID-19. Since the first outbreak in March 2020, Jakarta applied the large-scale social restriction, or PSBB, to control the number of virus infections in the city. Surprisingly, this action brings a positive impact to the environment. As you can see in the picture, Jakarta had a clear blue sky. For the past months, there has been an increasing number of cyclists buzzing around the city, a new panorama for Jakarta. The efforts of Jakarta in combating climate change impacts certainly have challenges. Creating public awareness, actions that are delayed due to pandemic situations are two main challenges that we face. In this regard, environmentally friendly fuels are very important. We see the opportunities to use Euro 4 fuel for vehicles and industrial activities as a strategy that has a significant impact on reducing the emission. Besides the two challenges, Jakarta has limited authority and resources to carry out this action. Despite this limitation, Jakarta always innovates and becomes a laboratory for implementing best practices. As you may have seen in the media, Jakarta recently received a prestigious Sustainable Transportation Award 2021. Jakarta was also selected as Vice Chair of C40 Steering Committee. 2 years ago, Jakarta also won the We Love City competition. Most importantly, this year we have decreased the PM 2.5 concentration levels, and the number of bus commuters have increased by 5 to 8% than last year. Jakarta, our beloved city, cannot receive these achievements without the collaborations with various stakeholders and, most importantly, the contributions from its inhabitants. At this moment, I also would like to give special gratitude to our collaboration partners in making the city go to a good transformation. They are World Resource Institute, C40, UCLG ASPAC, cLIVE, ITDP Indonesia, Vital Strategies, University of Indonesia, Bandung Institute of Technology. Along with these partners, Jakarta has done many research, inventory, climate action plan, education, and capacity building activities. Lastly, Jakarta stopped to create a climate resilient city and sustainable living environment. Each development actor keeps doing various innovations for the city. As the representative of Jakarta provincial government in this forum, I would like to mention that Jakarta opens its door for further collaborations to achieve this vision. The vision that is special for all of us, the inhabitants of beloved Jakarta. Thank you so much for having me in this forum. It is all from me, and I am looking forward to the fruitful discussion.
Thank you so much, Ibu Vera. I really like what you said at the end about how Jakarta opens its doors for more collaboration, which is exactly what we need and exactly the purpose of today's discussion as well. So already there are questions, Ibu Vera, for you waiting, which we will discuss at the end. But now first we will listen from Jessica, who's already, I think, on standby with the presentation. So please, Jessica, the floor is yours. 8 minutes.
Unmute. There.
There you go. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it's my audio.
Sorry about that.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, sorry about that. No, I was actually just thanking all of you for the opportunity to speak with you, and also thanking Ibu Vera for inspiring opening remarks, because I think much of what I'm about to say in the next 7.5 minutes or so is probably not news for you, but hopefully may help raise some of the public awareness of what you're trying to do in your job and make things a little bit easier. One of the key pieces about being able to respond to environmental change and to be able to both improve standards of living, improve well-being, improve human health, and at the same time, make sure that we're on track toward a zero carbon or even carbon negative world, is really the innovation piece. And I was very happy to see you mention the interest of Jakarta in continuing to be a hub and a leader in innovation. But I want to call attention to a particular kind of innovation that has helped to guide some of the programs that we've been creating, and also some of the things that we're trying to also make it easier for policymakers and for those in the public and civic society sectors to be able to move toward managing and steering what's an increasingly complex world. So the first point in this, what we all interstitial innovation, is to recognize that many of the systems of government that we've built up and much of the technical specialization that we've also built up over time is not necessarily well suited for an interconnected world. One of the key lessons from the COVID-19 crisis, the ongoing COVID-19 episode, is that the world and the drivers of change, the drivers of human health and environmental change, are much more connected across geography, across time, across space, than we really have the capacity to manage in a world that looks more like the square, with agencies, levels of government, specializations, academic disciplines that are divided and siloed in the face of a world that is really quite interconnected. So one of the key pieces and one of the key areas is to start to recognize those connections and to build new institutions, new forms of collaboration around those kinds of connections. The first step in those, and I'll give two examples of where we've started to try to build some of those new connections. The first is around trees and forests. So there are many different ways to look at a tree. You can look at it as a nuisance, as a barrier to planting what one wants to plant. You can look at it as a commodity, as something to extract wood for building. Look at it as a mediator of water flow, the root system holding soil in place, keeping a wetland alive, ensuring that there's flood resilience. You can look at it as shade, as a windbreak, as a source of mental health. There's actually a fair amount of research on trees and contribution to mental and physical health. You can look at it also as part of a community. Some of the new research on forests are looking at the links and the communication between trees. The point is that many of our market systems and our current policymaking looks at trees separately across these dimensions. So what we've tried to do with Cities for Forests, which is a program in which we're very proud that Jakarta is one of the early and founding members, is really to help communities look at trees as the intersection of economic, health, and social gain, and to be able to build programs around maintaining trees in their multifaceted contributions to cities. One of the programs that we've been very happy to help with in Jakarta is participatory mapping of trees, helping citizens and communities and multiple agencies, from water to urban planning, see the interconnectedness and the contribution of green spaces to multiple dimensions of the city. And I think programs like this, where we're able to bring together and where we're able to, as a society, come together and see the multiple dimensions of a single entry point, a single visible object, are extremely important. The second connection that I wanted to build and to mention is in air quality. The sort of brief reprieve in the blue skies that we've seen in COVID, in the COVID lockdowns have been temporary. But one of the key points about air quality is that what you breathe, what matters right there for what you're taking in, can come from kilometers away. On the left side of the slide, there's a still from Resource Watch. It's actually looking at the ozone distribution over Southeast and South Asia. And you can see that this is something that travels and builds up over very long distances. Similarly, the root causes of air pollution are often deeply embedded in everyday activities that we want to be able to maintain. Things like moving around, things like cooking, heating, lighting, the power that we need for economic development. And all of those pieces, those interconnections between health, energy, economy, agriculture, those are all pieces that span multiple departments, multiple levels of government. One of the other programs that we've been very excited to launch in Jakarta and with the governor's office is, and along with actually Vital Strategies as well, is the Clean Air Catalyst, to start from the position of well-being and human well-being, but to look backwards at some of the connections between what people are breathing, where it comes from, and why, what are those underlying root causes, and address them in a way that recognizes these interconnections and doesn't simply divide up a problem into one agency's responsibility, one sector's responsibility, or a particular geography. So I think in this moment, one of the things that we're really seeing both the demand for and the requirement for is social innovation. I think the definition that I have here on the slide, which is really about socially creative strategies which reconfigure social relations, is one of the essential focus areas. Not just technology innovation, but this form of social innovation is an essential area to pay much more attention to in order to be able to respond more effectively to a world that is far more interconnected than our societies, our agencies, and our technical specializations are now. I know this is for those of you who are in the thick of managing climate change, who are looking at working across different agencies within the government or between public-private partnerships. This isn't news, but it's something that I think is often under-recognized. And the more that we can reward, recognize, and name this kind of collaboration, the easier it is to continue and to reinforce and to expand it. So with that, I'd say that the key to environmental resilience is not simply rethinking our climate and sustainability, but rethinking the way that we have organized ourselves, starting with specific, tangible air, trees, water that we can see, but looking at its deeper roots across geographies, time, and space. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm looking forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's a really great presentation, and I think it sends a very clear message about how the interconnectedness of our world basically requires social innovation. And I think part of the question also is not just how we can recognize it, but also how can we enable such collaboration, changing from the business as usual. And hopefully we'll have more time to discuss about that later. For now, I would like to invite Mary Jane, who's already with us, but unfortunately cannot turn on the video due to connection problems. And no worries at all. Mary Jane, if you can start, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our honorable guests. Firstly, let me provide a short introduction of our organization and what we have been doing in our region. I'm sorry, but I cannot see my presentation right now. Okay, so ICLEI, the local government. Okay.
Please,
so
sorry, I interrupted.
Okay. So ICLEI, the local government sustainability is a leading global network, and I particularly represent the Southeast Asian Region Secretariat. Okay, so with me also, okay, thank you. With me also today are from our Indonesian office, we have here Salamat and other members of the project team. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Located in the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. In Indonesia, we have 14 members, and that includes the Jakarta city. Next slide, please. Currently, we have ongoing projects and programs, collaboration with the organizations to ensure comparative advantage is complemented with partnered with several organizations.
Well, we apologize, everyone, for the technical difficulties experienced by our speaker. But to our moderator, Ms. Andita, we ask you to please take over as our current speaker. Should maybe fix her signal and maybe better to connect with us. Andita, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, we'll resume with Mary Jane hopefully later when she has better connection. For now, I am going to pick two questions first, perhaps for Ibu Vera. So these are questions for you, Ibu. One comes from Ibu Ririn from Vital Strategies. The question is, what are the innovations that have been or will be carried out by the Jakarta provincial government in maintaining environmental resilience and in Jakarta? And particularly linking to Jessica's presentation, how does Jakarta collaborate to achieve those environmental resilience targets? The second question comes from Pak Ahmad Safruddin from KPBB. And the question is, what's the strategy by the governor of DKI Jakarta to phase out dirty fuels for motor vehicles such as Premium 88, Pertalite 90, and Solar 48 and Dexlite 51, because we have better fuel quality. So those are the two questions. Perhaps while waiting for Mary Jane, Ibu Vera, if you would please answer. Thank you. You're still on mute, Ibu Vera.
Oh.
There you go. Okay, you're back.
Okay. Thank you for the question. First, I'd like to answer the first questions. DKI Jakarta provincial government opens the door to collaboration with various parties who wish to participate in efforts to achieve environmental resilience in DKI Jakarta. Collaboration is carried out through developing partnership with local and global partners. Currently, Jakarta has collaborated with several organizations. Among others are cLIVE through the Ambitious City Promises program, which has been implemented since 2017 to 2021. C40 to the Climate Action Plan program, and Vital Strategies through the Jakarta Air Quality Improvement Program, and WRI through the application of calculating and offsetting individual carbon emissions through tree planting in Jakarta. And for the first question about the innovations.
Yes, Ibu, what are the innovations that have been implemented or will be implemented?
Yeah, Jakarta provincial government focus the actions and programs in maintaining environmental resilience in several sectors. there are several sectors that give the huge contributions to greenhouse gases. For example, the transportation, waste, avolu, and industry. To support this action related to these sectors, Jakarta Provincial Government has issued some regulations, such as the Governor Regulation on Green Building, Government Regulation on Climate Program, and Government Instruction on Climate Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Working Team. That's those are some examples of the supporting regulations. That is for the first two questions. And for the second question about the dirty fuel, as we know, since the enactment of law number 23, the year 2014, concerning the regional government, all oil and gas authority has been withdrawn to the central government of Indonesia. However, Jakarta Provincial Government has collaborated with Pertamina to limit the provision of premium at gas stations in Jakarta boundary. Besides that, Jakarta Provincial Government has also stipulated the Governor Decree number 66 in the year 2020 concerning the test for motor vehicle exhaust emissions. So this is motivated by the data that 70% of the emission contributor in Jakarta comes from the transportation sector. So with the enactment of this governor regulation, it is hoped all vehicles operating in Jakarta will have passed the emission test. And to pass the emission test, the vehicle technology must use fuel with an octane above 90. So hopefully, it is hoped that the vehicle in Jakarta will shift to use.
Yeah, noted, Ibu Vera. Thank you for your answer. I think the participants are also interested to hear more about your collaboration, one of which is with WRI, actually, Jessica. So perhaps this is a question from Yulia. Perhaps if you can highlight what are some of the lessons learned from the collaborations that, for example, WRI has had with the Office of Governor in Jakarta, and particularly if you can touch on the importance of data transparency in informing actions and targets related to mitigation and adaptation.
Thank you. That's actually that's a very good question. It's two separate questions. The first, I think, one of the answer to the first is that we've learned an enormous amount through cooperation with the governor's office and more broadly in the city of Jakarta. One of the things that we always learn from such collaborations is really the practical realities of implementation, because it's always well and good to come with an idea, a high-level goal, a data-driven report, a thought on how things might change, and then realize that actually the reason for the status quo, the reason that things are, is actually much more, it's a little more complex, and we always learn an enormous amount about sort of matching reality and theoretical ideas together in order to come up with a workable solution. And I think just in some of the previous questions, these questions about switching fuels, the questions about some of the tensions over land use, there's a reason things are the way they are. And sometimes it does take time, and it takes a recognition of the interconnection between different goals to find the best solution. And so I think we've learned a lot in how to do that in some of the realities in Jakarta. I think on the second point on this data and transparency are important for building a common sense of what's the problem and what's the potential solution. It's very hard to come to agreement on something when people are seeing and have different assumptions. Actually, a lot of my work is as a game theorist. And even just in a theoretical realm, when people have different beliefs and different levels of information, it's much, much harder to come to an agreement, particularly when there's a conflict or there are concerns over distribution of who wins and who loses. That lack of common information does impede those kinds of agreements. That said, there's also a value to taking the time to deliberate with a small group of friends and to really figure out what's the answer to the problem, what's the right solution, before having to defend that solution. And that thought process, I know all of us as individuals, it's valuable to have the time to reflect. It's also something that is sort of a limited time, a reason for not moving to 100% transparency immediately before there's also time to think. So there are pluses and minuses, but ultimately data transparency is essential for building a shared agreement and consensus.
This link to game theory is really fascinating, and I didn't know that's also part of your background. I think
that's what my PhD is in, is game theory. So that's the doctor, game theory.
Yeah, I think, and when we talk about social innovations and collaboration, game theory can really inform how to enable that, right? As you said, kind of sequencing, like when data should be made transparent and so on, when we should think about it first and how it will affect the different players in the game. So that's really interesting. Now I'll try my luck again with Mary Jane. Hopefully, if Mary Jane is back with us. Hi, Mary Jane. Are you back?
Yes. Hello. Thank you. I'm sorry for that.
All right.
This is
no problem at all. Please continue with the presentation.
Yes, I think I have to directly respond to the answer and skip on the introduction part. So let me have my slides presented on slide 10, please. So just to provide further context on what I will be sharing are products of our researches and experiences working with countries in Southeast Asian region. So just to provide further context on my response, it is important first to realize that the pandemic does not just affect human health, resulting to hundreds of thousands of deaths and decline on most countries' economy. In the Philippines, for instance, it was projected that at the same time, this pandemic also brought us into a new normal state where the management of environment and sustainable use of natural resources vis-a-vis addressing the threat of future pandemic under a changing climate became even more challenging.
I think perhaps we lost Mary Jane again, unfortunately. Yeah, okay, no problem. Now, so talk about social innovation and the pandemic challenges. This is part of it. And I think now perhaps we can go back to the list of questions and discuss with Ibu Vera and Jessica first. I think, so we've talked a lot about social innovations and collaborations, lessons learned, but maybe in really practical terms, and this is a question that's being asked as well. The title of today's session is about rethinking, right? So how do we think about what we think we know differently? And so maybe in very practical terms, how have your institutions, both the Jakarta's office and also WRI perhaps, have been, doing things differently, perhaps, because of the pandemic, and how do you plan after the pandemic you will do things differently? Because Ibu Vera earlier also mentioned about Jakarta's commitment to build back better, Bu. So how do you plan to implement that? Maybe starting from Bu Vera first, if the team can unmute. Yes, thanks.
Thank you for the questions. If we talking about rethinking related to the climate, we think that building a climate resilient city is not only about reducing the carbon emissions, but also how to develop the preparedness and resiliency of our urban system and our community to face the changing environment, to face the disaster, and to face the crisis. And if we're talking about the climate change issues, it is not only the responsibility of government, including the local government of Jakarta, but also it is the responsibility of every parties, every stakeholders in the city. And of course, we need the collaboration to tackle the climate change issues. So we cannot do everything alone related to the climate change issues. So we have to rethink to ask the participations from all of the stakeholders and all of the parties in the city and also in the national or including the central government, because in some extent the Jakarta doesn't have any authority related to climate change, such as the fuel. So the fuel quality is the authority of the central government. So I think we have to think that everybody in the city, this country, has a responsibility to collaborate to tackle the climate change issues. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Farah. I think one of those everybody is also WRI, who has been actually collaborating with the government's office. So perhaps, Jessica, if you can again answer the question, how have WRI do things differently and rethinking the approach given the pandemic, and how we should anticipate ahead of us, how we should rethink the way we do business as usual.
So it's interesting. I mean, as the city's program on the energy program and across WRI, we have had to rethink our approach for how we work, as well as what kinds of programs and what kinds of goals we focus on. One thing, so just internally, so we're a fairly large international organization. We have multiple programs. We operate as a matrix. We've had to really examine our own interconnectedness between, say, oceans and climate, forests and air quality, climate and air quality, and to specifically start to look at how to build internal short-term task forces across programs to look at systems change, to look at the kinds of social innovation that often gets lost when you silo work into issue areas or geographies. So we've restructured, not necessarily on a permanent basis, but we have started to create these cross-cutting working groups to make sure that we're looking at inclusion, that we're looking at systems change, that we're looking at behaviors and understanding behaviors across our programs. So one thing is that. The second area in which we've changed is also to look much more closely at making sure that we we pay attention to the deeper links between an immediate response and the longer term, broader spatial consequences of that. And I think that making sure that we are really covering the risks that people are facing is something we've worked into all of our programs within the cities, oceans, forests, et cetera, to make sure that we're really being very careful to be thoughtful through all of the consequences of particular decarbonization and other programs that we're looking at. So it has affected us, and it's made us really realize, in some sense, the importance of an explicit attention to risk management and resilience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that experience is shared by other organizations as well, all around the world. One more question for Jessica, actually, is related to this behavior change, right? Because I think when we talk about air quality, the perception on spatial planning, it's one thing, I think, to have to shift people's paradigm or perception, and it's sometimes another thing to help them change their behavior and actually, adapt new habits. Bu Vera earlier mentioned about the bike lane and the public transportation, but whether people will change their behavior sometimes need further rethinking. I don't know if you have any comments on, how can we also help the society, at large to not only rethink, but also change their behavior, whether there's good practice from other countries, perhaps to nudge people to change their behavior towards sustainability.
Behavior change is tough. I mean, we always look at it as there's the opening wedge, there's the story that catches your attention. Then there's the science, data, institutional change, and positive and negative reinforcement that sustain it. And a lot of that, you can't have the sustainability without that change. You don't get the spark without the immediate humanization of the story. The two together are essential. It's very hard to rely only on behavior change without that reinforcement.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if Bu Vera wants to comment as well on behavior change. But how has perhaps the Jakarta Governor's Office also tried to affect behavior change among the society?
Behavior, I think actually this pandemic situation make us not easier, but easier to people to think to change their behavior to more think about their habits, about their health, about their daily life. So, for example, we see that the working from home is something that is usual today. So, we can reduce the internal trips within Jakarta boundary. So everybody can do activities in their home. So it must change their behavior in their daily life. So this is the moment that we can campaign. We have a public campaign to for people to put more attention to the environment, asking their participation in the activities, in the actions for combating climate change, and they have new habits for daily life and for their health, For example, we can now so many people has habits to use bicycle to the office, and also we have so many new pedestrians. So the behavior of the people of Jakarta changes from not from so they are so lazy to walk, and now they are so happy to use the pedestrian to walk. So I think the situation right now, the present situation, can help us as a government office of Jakarta to more or to have a public campaign to change the behavior of the community of Jakarta to realize the climate resilient city of Jakarta. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Vera. I definitely agree. I think the challenge is to sustain those behavior change, which was enabled by the pandemic, right? Because we see that now people prefer to hang out outdoor. They try to find, parks and so on because of the virus, and, avoiding being in air-conditioned room. They also take a bike to go to places. But I think the challenge is how to sustain this. Once the pandemic is over, how do we keep those behavior from going back to where we were? And I think part of that, and this is the final question from our audience for Ibu Vera, actually, is how do we make sure the transparency of mitigation and adaptation targets, so that, speaking of collaboration, all these different organizations, the different sectors can help the government to monitor whether those targets have been achieved, and can find out, where things are behind and where, support is most needed. Because I think you mentioned the sectors, right, Bu, about forest and land use change. Maybe, people would like to know how's the progress with open green spaces in the city, whether more can be done. And then on energy, transportation, industry, you mentioned earlier, on waste management, for example. So is there a way so that in all of those sectors, the targets can be, put out there, transparent enough, accessible for the people, and we can monitor and track how far has the Jakarta government made progress vis-a-vis the target?
Okay, thank you. Actually, Jakarta does open for action for what to the social media application is the can so I think we already done transparency for everybody can access the progress. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Vera. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's just me, but I think we're having some connection problems, so we couldn't really hear your answer. Jessica, were you able to hear what Ibu Vera was saying? No. Yeah, Ibu, if you can perhaps repeat, yeah. I apologize. But this is an important question, I think. So, please.
Okay, no problem. Actually, Jakarta already opened all of data for the action that we have that we have done, and the result, the policy, and almost all the information is provided in our application that is called Sijaki. So most data published in Sejaki platform. And you can see, for example, the daily air quality condition, the real-time flooding monitoring that platform. Everybody can access the application, so everybody can access the data, the information of what we did in Jakarta. So I think what we did in related to transparency matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu. What's the name of the application again? I think I was disrupted. I'm going to download it right away.
Sejaki.
Sejaki. Okay. I hope all the participants also heard that and right away can download it. So thank you so much, Ibu Vera and Jessica, for your time and for sharing your insights and wisdom to all of us. Before we close, perhaps just one short minute from each of you, a closing statement regarding what each of us who are listening to this can do right after this session. Like what can we do? How should we be thinking about our work? As individuals, but also as part of the broader collaboration. Maybe from Jessica first, and then Ibu Vera.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with all of you. I think one last message would be that I think in the environmental world and in the public health world, we've been using fear-based messaging for far too long. I think the power of illustrating a possibility, even if it's forced upon you. So the possibility of having a vibrant economy, working from home and traveling less, the possibility of having a forum like this where we're all on different sides of the world and it still mostly works. The possibility and the joy of biking to work when you never imagined that you would. Those moments of possibility are far more powerful for sustained behavior change than any fear-based messaging. So I think as a community, moving more to how do we create those moments of possibility, that's our big challenge. And I think that's incumbent on all of us to shift from fear to the illustration and creation of those possibilities.
That's really something. It actually got me thinking. I think I'm guilty as well on using the fear-based messaging too much. And I agree. I think the message of hope and possibility is more needed today than ever. Now for Ibu Vera, perhaps, Bu, for your closing statement.
Yeah. Thank you. The government of Jakarta is aimed to be a collaborator where the citizens are the innovators. So climate actions are long-term action, and what we do. So we ask everyone to do things, whatever you can, starting on your daily life. Jakarta will not stop to create a climate resilient city and sustainable living environment, and let's collaborate together to take climate. So collaboration is a must.
Collaboration is a must. I think that really sums up our discussion today really well. And I hope that all of you got the insights and wisdom. And again, the very important message that sustainability and resilience is the task for everyone across sectors, across levels, and everyone has a role to play. So with that, I would like to thank again Ibu Vera, Jessica, and I'm really sorry for Mary Jane for the technical challenges. But I think overall the discussion was really good and fruitful. And now I'll give the floor back to the host in the studio. Thank you very much.
Pandita, thank you so much for handling this session on sustainability. And we'd like to also thank our speakers, Ms. Jessica and Ibu Vera. Thank you so much for passing your knowledge to all of us. And to our participants, I see that there's so many of you. We're so glad to have you here. And we'd like to engage with you more. Send us more questions for our next sessions. On behalf of our host, JDCN, we'd like to extend our profound gratitude and sincere thanks to everyone for your participation and for your attendance here today. To our moderator and to speakers and all participants, without your support, this forum would not be possible. So once again, we say thank you. And once again, we'd like to thank our esteemed speakers for extending your knowledge, and to our participants for engaging with us. I hope everyone has gained incredible insights from our speakers, especially for the provincial governments of DKI Jakarta for their effort to create more policies in the future. And to bookend our first session on the second day of our forum, please allow me to quote a very famous quote by Albert Einstein on sustainability. And he said that we shall need a substantially new way of thinking if humanity is to survive. And that undoubtedly hits the mark, especially as we all welcome 2021 with breath that is bated. Basically, bracing ourselves for what's coming next. So, everyone, as the day is still young, let us move on to our next session, our next policy discussion on the economic and social recovery during recession.